guys, Christina Koshman here, Senior Tax and Estate Planner with MLD Wealth Management Group. We spoke to our speaker today, David Gould, in previous video about how to turn conflict into opportunity. Today's video is in essence part 2 of that video, as we're going to be discussing how to get ahead of conflict and hopefully how to resolve the conflict. So many of you may remember David Gould from the previous video, but for those of you who don't, David is the founder of David Gould Mediation and Conflict Coaching. For over 30 years, David has assisted industry, business, and government organizations to effectively address hundreds of conflicts. He is one of Canada's most experienced mediators and an industry leader in the design of conflict prevention and management systems. So welcome back, David.
Thank you, Chris.
So as I mentioned,
to be here.
Oh, sorry. So as I mentioned, today's topic, the resolution formula, as you so phrased it, and 8 steps to get ahead of conflict. So I'll just get right into it if you're comfortable with that.
Sure.
Okay. So you talked about being stuck in a story in our last video. What do you mean by that?
Well, Chris, when we last spoke, I shared that you can think about conflict or the nature of conflict as having a key message. All conflict is created in the past by us attaching to our story about what happened to us and what we made it mean. And we focus on the fault and the blame and the right and the wrong of that story. And when we bring it into the present moment and work to enroll everybody around us in our story, we find ourselves caught or trapped in our story, in conflict. Because we're creating our present moment, and indeed we're focusing on the future and making it be about that conflict. So I say that's what it means to be stuck in story. Now, I have a personal example of how a lesson that I learned very clearly several years ago. I was involved in a personal litigation over an investment that I had made with 2 others who were friends, actually 4 others who were friends, 2 of whom sued the 3 of us. And we were outraged. And I remember, despite all of my training and all of my background, I got invested with my partners in how right we are with our story. And we spent 4.5 years stuck in our story, during which time we had zero effective conversations or negotiations with the other side, notwithstanding our desires to reach out through lawyers, etc. It just didn't happen until we were literally on the steps of the final courthouse, when we were managed to craft together, or our lawyers did, a solution that we all decided was better than continuing to go to battle. That was a tremendous lesson for me about earlier is better and getting ahead of conflict. Mm-hmm. So we need to be very aware of enrolling our friends in our story. We want their help, but we want their objective help. We want to be, and we're always going to have different stories. We're different people, we have different backgrounds, we have different cultures, we have different interests and needs, we have different approaches to things. So we're all inevitably going to have challenging conversations. And as I said in my last talk, how we prepare for those conversations has a huge impact on our success.
Mm-hmm. So what is the resolution formula?
Well, I talked about conflict living in the past. We bring it into the present moment, so it's alive here by our choice. And then we project it into the future and live into it again by our choice. All choices are in this present moment. So the resolution formula is a shift from the focus on the past and what happened and fault and blame to the future and what do we do about it together to resolve it. And that's the resolution formula, and it has 8 what I think are fairly simple steps that guide our preparation for negotiations. Because remember, we want to be, your clients and my clients want to be getting to the conflict as early as possible before it's become an outrageous, righteous anger and drives us forward into a trap in the future.
Mhm.
The Sufi poet Rumi, a 13th century Sufi poet, said, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. So these 8 steps are preparation for being in that field and creating possibility.
Okay. So tell us about the 8 steps.
All right. So the first step is fairly obvious. Recognize as early as possible in your negotiations, in your conversations, that you have the potential for conflict, and be willing to objectively step back from it and take a hard look at your own story, your own contribution to that conflict. And this is where your family and friends can help you, but with objectivity. You don't want to enroll them in your story. That's not helpful. You want to be able to step back from it. Step 2, recognize you're going to have emotions. Yes, you do have them, but don't let them control you. Don't let them take over your actions and influence your ability to think through what's really happening here. So you've got to step back from your emotions as much as possible and get help to do that, again, from family and friends. Now, step 3 is really important. You want to look at your own story and unpack it for the facts, just the facts, establishable facts about what happened, what really happened. And then you want to look at what you make those facts mean, the judgments, the interpretations, the assumptions about the others that you make from those facts. A simple exercise really helps. You can take a sheet of paper, draw a line straight down the middle, and on the left-hand side, what happened, the facts, and write them out. And get some help from friends and family to look at them and say, this is what happened, not what I make it mean, but what happened. And then on the right-hand side of the page, write down your judgments, your assumptions, and your interpretations, and your meanings. In most conflicts, I have found that most of the conflict is on the meaning side. The facts are capable of being determined. And in fact, that's step 4. You need to ask yourself what you can do individually and personally to prove the facts, to establish the facts in an independent fashion. And what can you do collectively with the other side to establish those facts so that you are both talking about the same series of facts? Let me give you a simple example. That might involve hiring an independent appraiser to give you a valuation of some asset that you're arguing over. Or it might be that you need to reach out for independent standards such as building codes to establish how deep the foundation of a building should be rather than arguing about it. So you want to do your homework before you get too far into the conflict. Now, step 5 involves taking your 2 sheets of, sorry, I need to back up. I jumped ahead to step 5. Step 4, I got to catch that because it's really the most interesting part in a sense. What you want to do is take another sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, and on the left side, write down what you think they think the facts are. And be objective about that. And then on the right-hand side of the page, write down what you think they think they're making those facts mean. What are their likely interpretations, judgments, and assumptions? And then when you've done that, you can move on to step 5 and do the analysis that I just talked about. And indeed, unpack that story to look at what is the likely interests and needs and concerns that both sides have. The analysis that you can do with that sheet of paper as step, whatever number we're on, 7, I think, really makes a difference, step 6. And so that analysis is critical. I do this so automatically that it's even hard for me to talk about them in steps because they just flow together naturally. And I think that our audiences will find that as you do this work, you'll get insights about, oh, I see, yeah, okay, I can understand why they see it that way and why it's so problematic for them. And then the 7th step is to reach out to the other side and invite them. And it's critical that it's an invitation, not a demand. It's not something that they must do, or even that they should do. It's something that you're trying to enroll them as a possibility for finding a solution. So in addition, you invite them to meet with you to have a dialogue about how to solve this, as opposed to a debate about who's right or wrong. And when you do that, you can tell them about the preparation that you've done. Share what the first 2 or 3 or 4 steps were, and say, here's my insight into what's important to you. Help me understand if I've missed the mark. Share with me what's really going on for you about this. And then listen. As Stephen Covey said, seek first to understand. Mm-hmm. And that's step 8. Get in the room, commit to a dialogue about what's possible to solve it, as opposed to a debate about right and wrong. And use the resolution concept, formula concept, to shift your conversation from the past and fault and blame and being stuck in story to the future and what's possible, and how we co-create the strategy, the path, the milestones, the steps that are necessary to get us to a solution, which is what that estate family did in the example that I shared with you. So that steps mixed up a bit, 1 to 8. But the final bit of advice I have got is get some help. As I said, family and friends, if they're objective and supportive and can be a sort of a second set of eyes on the problem. A conflict coach can make a huge difference. For example, I had been retained by a business that was involved in the development of a very large project as a co-developer with another company. They had some serious business disputes to discuss. I worked with them through the 8 steps to prepare. They went in and had a meeting with the other president and vice president of the other firm. And in about 4 hours, they managed to resolve every one of their issues. And I was informed that the preparation had made a huge difference in the success of the conversations and preserved the relationship, which was the only way really that the project could go forward. So it can make a huge difference. Mediators are always a very good idea if you are blocked and stuck in your stories, because they can be an evaluator, a facilitator of your conversations. They can remind you about the future and what's possible. And they're neutral, and so they can be a tremendous support. And lastly, if you must hire a lawyer, you want to find a lawyer that can be an excellent ally for you if the litigation is necessary. You want them tough as nails on the problem, but you also want them focused on every opportunity that arises for having these kinds of negotiations to get matters resolved. That was certainly what did not happen in our litigation. It wasn't the lawyer's fault so much as it was ours. But basically it turned an excellent investment into a bloody disaster. And that's my lesson. So
yeah,
these 8 steps will make a difference.
Yeah, and this is all great information. I think, like I said in our first video, I think, your 8 steps to resolution can fit into any situation that I can even, see that's possible. Anywhere from, talking to your loved ones about, moving to an elder care facility, or,
sure.
Estate, you discussed the estate topic, that could be a huge one. So I really appreciate your comments today.
Well, what's going on with that, Chris, is that when someone else feels that you've really listened to them and that you understand what's important to them, you get their interests and needs, and that you care about their interests and needs, they're much more likely to be open to listening to your own story of what's important to you and your interests and needs. So Stephen Covey was right. Seek first to understand and then to be understood.
That's
great advice.
So true. So, okay, I think, unless you have anything else to add, David, I greatly appreciate you joining us today to discuss this very real topic of, conflict. And I really appreciate you sharing your personal story with us as well. I do know you have an upcoming live webinar. Can you just please tell us when that might be taking place and how one would register if they are interested?
Sure. You can go on my website, www.davidgouldmediation.com, and register for the webinar. It's approximately 30 minutes in length. It covers off in a little more detail the things that we've talked about today. And it is on June 18th at 11 a.m. in the morning, Mountain Time, Calgary time. So I would welcome anybody that wants to can go on the website and sign up. I'll also be sending out notice on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Awesome. All right. Well, perfect. Again, thank you for joining us today. And as always, if you have any questions or comments on today's video, please feel free to reach out to me at MLD Wealth Management, as I'm always happy to have conversations with you about all of the topics that we've discussed. Thanks again, David, and take care.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate this.
Okay.